The situation sometimes that drivers get into is they've got to go and get a truck, and you don't want to be on an impulse, but sometimes that's the situation, and that was the situation with this truck. So the place I went, they don't necessarily let you do like an inspection like you have in the back of your head that you know that you should do. They're kind of like, okay, there's one decent truck on our lot, and there's 10 people that are coming out there right now, so whoever's the first one that grabs it gets it. And if you hesitate, you're lost. So this particular one, I was the first one on a Friday morning waiting for it. I was the last one on Friday night. It never came out of the inspection bay. And by Monday morning, I sat the whole weekend. They got it out, and you know, you're supposed to get a test drive and you're supposed to get this, but at that point it was like, you know, go, go, go. But you know, considering what I saw other people drive away with, I got really lucky.
Okay, well, let's find out. Let's see.
So that's why I'm here now after all of these days going, all right, now what exactly did I get here?
Now, have you owned a truck with death fluid before?
Yes.
And has somebody gone through?
Well, I haven't owned one.
Okay.
I've run one.
Okay, well, let me just mention a few things because some people don't know this stuff. Whenever you have a truck that takes DEF fluid, this is a newer engine, newer truck. It's got the SCR, you know, canister underneath it, which takes DEF fluid, which is this you know, tank right here. Obviously, you don't ever want to put anything but DEF fluid in there, you know. But when you do, when you fill this up, it's very important to make sure you never get crystals around the cap and keep that cap clean. And also, the DEF fluid had the pumps, the nozzles like to crystallize and get dirty. Always wipe them off because there's a screen filter inside this canister, inside this tank, before it gets to the SCR system. And this stuff loves to crystallize. It loves to dry and create this little white crystals and powder. And it gets in that screen filter, and then you get nothing but emissions problems, nothing but SCR problems, check engine lights, failure after failure. You take it to the dealership, and most of the time, they're going to connect the computer to it. The computer's not going to say, oh, you have a clogged filter. It's going to say you have a failing system. So the first thing out of their mouth is usually, oh, you need a $9,000 can. Or you need a whole controller, or you need this or that. Some of them will troubleshoot, but most of them don't, actually. Most of them go by the software. The software's not going to tell you, oh, you have a clogged filter, you know, or something simple. So, you know, a lot of that stuff, you know, I think, you know, you need to be aware of it and be able to work on it, or be able to at least check it, or know that, hey, have you checked this? Have you done that? You know, when you go someplace and you're having problems, at least be able to have some education against some of this emission stuff, because it will eat you up if you don't. And if you're at the mercy of them, they're going to say, oh, you need a new turbocharger, when, you know, they put a new turbocharger on and 2 weeks later you're back in another shop for the same problem. Well, what did that $6,000 get you? Nothing. So, you know, those are things you need to be aware of with these newer trucks. So we'll get into that. It's another subject. Right now we're just looking at the truck. It doesn't look bad, you know, it's not all scratched up. It doesn't look like it's been hit. Of course, you know, they covered this thing.
I did do a rig dig on it. I didn't get to do an oil sample.
Okay.
It was a drayage truck.
Okay.
It had 3 owners its first year that seemed to be port drivers.
Yeah.
And it has a port sticker on it still. And it was governed at 55 miles an hour. So I imagine that's about all the work it really did.
Okay. Some of the things I'm looking at the brakes. The brakes look okay. They're not low. I'm looking at the shocks. Any kind of oil or seepage out the bottom of these shocks means they're bad. They've got 200,000, 250,000 roughly. You know, when they come up on that point, that's when the shocks start getting weak. And then by about 300,000 or 400,000, they start leaking. You should probably replace the shocks at 250. That's what I would do on my truck. They're about $60 a piece. They're not real expensive. I buy the cheap ones.
Okay.
You know, I just go to Global or one of those places.
Where?
Global or one of the places in Atlanta here. They're pretty cheap. You go to the dealer, they're gonna be more money.
Okay.
But you can take one of the shocks off, take it to them, and they'll match it, and they'll say, oh yeah, you need all these, and they'll just like $60 a piece.
Okay.
Because you know, if you change them regularly, you don't need really expensive shocks, unless you're driving off road or things like that. For the highway use, you don't really need them. That's my experience with it anyway. Torque bars look good. The drive shaft. The rear drive shaft, you can see some rust on it, and the U-joint, and this kind of stuff. But your drive shaft is greaseless, so it should be fairly dry. You can see back here, You can see back here is a little bit of grease coming out of it. Let me go get a pointer. But you can see right here is your U-joint. It's a little plus symbol in the middle of this drive shaft. You can see there's a little bit of grease on this one right here. Does that look like grease dried coming out of the edge of it? So keep an eye on that. You see right there, it's got a little bit of grease coming out of it. So
something's dried.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on that. What you want to do, in fact, I'll do that while we're here because safety is my #1 concern. Let me go get a piece of plywood real quick, okay?
All right.
All right, this universal joint right here, I can feel there's no grease fitting on it, so it's greaseless. There's a little bit of seepage on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push on it really hard with my hands and yank and make sure there's no play on either one. And that's good because you don't know the history of this truck. And also this joint right here is pretty good. There's no play in it. So that's really good. The other thing that I'm looking at is these two here. This drive shaft is a joint in the middle, but it's really one drive shaft. It's like a hook this way and a hook this way, and that's how they hold together. Well, these have to be lined up with each other on both the rear drive shaft and the front one. Otherwise, you get vibration in the truck.
Okay.
So this one's lined up because you don't know if somebody's had this apart or worked on it, you know, these kind of things. So always try to pay attention to this stuff when you're looking at a truck that's been used. You said it's been, you know, off-road. Who knows what somebody's done? I'm just looking for the obvious.
Okay.
So I don't see anything. It looks like it's been taken apart. Brake chambers are all still original. Just make sure they're not leaky. Nothing looks like it's out of adjustment. Well, you have the parking brake set though, don't you? Yeah, you might want to. We maybe could release the parking brake and look at the brakes to see if they're out of adjustment. Probably aren't. The truck's not that old, but now I'm all dirty. Look at that. So would you go in and push to release the parking brake? Let's get a brick and chocolate wheel.
Ready?
All right. The brakes don't look like they're too bad. A little bit of gap in them, but not bad. One DOT officer told me one time, and this is kind of BS. You know, you can't go by this, obviously. But one DOT officer told me one time, you can slide a business card between the brake pad and the drum. That's when they start to pick on you. It doesn't really look like you have that kind of clearance here, so it still looks pretty good. And that's a good sign.
Point to where you're showing where the business card would go if they could slip it in.
Right here, you want to zoom in on the camera? Right here in this joint, right? See, this is the brake drum.
Let me get it.
This is the brake drum. This big thing. Okay, and then this is the brake pad, this little thing. So right in that joint right there, right where my fingernail is. So a lot of them would do a quick check, you know, kind of thing. But we knew your brakes were in good shape because we had a thermal camera. And that thermal camera pretty much showed that everything was even as far as heat goes. And that helps a lot too. But not everybody has that. So that looks good, suspension looks good. There's no way to see if it's in or out of alignment, axle alignment, because you had the tires replaced with different ones. And it looks like they put a different size tire over here than they did the rest of it. Did it come with those tires worn like that?
There was one that was really kind of very beat up.
Because these look good.
Yeah.
They're all different ones. You can see they're all different kinds.
This one was very beat up. And I had asked them, is it coming out like that? With that one, they said it's DOT legal. So
it's legal, but barely. There's only one concern I have with it. That one's obviously a recap, which I would never run a recap on a tractor. Trailer maybe, but not a tractor. So at some point I would consider maybe changing them. But
how many? That one and this one?
You can see that one there. Recap. But my concern is, A, are both these tires the same height? Because if this one's shorter than this one, they're going to fight each other going down the road, and it's going to wear exponentially. But B, if these are tall, you know, because they have a full height of rubber on them, you know, and tread, and those are worn down, then the diameter of these are bigger than those. You can see that when you look across here too. You can see these tires are actually physically bigger than those tires because those are worn down.
Yeah.
And what happens inside the differential is, you know, when you're going down the highway, this one's spinning slightly faster than this one. So what happens is, you know, every 15 or 20 revolutions of this one is 21 revolutions of that one. So inside here, there's what they call the spider gears. So the spider gears, instead of being stationary and maybe just, you know, moving a little bit between the road, they're constantly turning because to make up the difference in, you know, one rotating faster. These gears are constantly moving, So it causes a little more wear than you normally would get inside the differential, and a little more heat. And if you're loaded, that extra heat on a, you know, middle of the summer, 120 degrees, Arizona desert, I-10, you're 80,000 pounds, and you're climbing that 3% grade that's 14 miles long out there, and that could be just enough heat to cause issues with your rear ends. So, personally, I wouldn't leave it like that for a long, you know, when you get some extra money, I would try to fix some of this stuff on the back end.
Okay.
Just things to be concerned about.
All right.
So, you know, that's just kind of stuff. If anything, if I was a mechanic or if I was, you know, driver was an assistant or just didn't have the money to fix the tires, I would not have done this on the front. I would have done it on the back because the back always runs cooler than the front. So you get less heat from use because the front is always what generates the most heat because you have all the extra gears in there.
Can they be switched?
Yeah, you could probably switch the back ones and front ones or whatever. Or just put these two, whichever ones were the closest match, across the front and then
use those
the
two
mismatched
back
ones,
there.
in the back more. So, you know, it's just my thoughts on it. Just some things to think about.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you have to do it, but you can see that these have been worked on. A little rusty, that's fine. I would touch them up. You can see that the axle nuts have been off of them, and that's probably a good sign. At 250,000 miles, these have to slide out, and then you retorque the hub bearings every 250,000 miles. Somebody may have done it. I would check one, and if it was good, which was usually this one is the worst one, I would check that one. If it was good, maybe call the rest good, maybe not, I don't know. Okay. But I would check one of them just to be safe.
All right.
You know, when you do your 250K maintenance, it's easiest pie to do. Sanders, pull them out on your own before it's. Just take a little gun to it, slide them out, check it. It's really easy.
Okay.
But the reason why you have to do this, or the reason why they recommend to do this, is because when you're, and I'll show you, when you're on the passenger side over here, those hub bearings and the hub nut's right here in the center, and the hub bearings, when you're going down the road, you're always going down the road and the wheels are going this way because you're going forward, okay? And the hub nuts, they tighten this direction. So on the passenger side, when you're going down the road, it's always wanting to tighten that nut and wear the bearing and everything else, you know. It's got a keeper in it to keep it from spinning too far. But sometimes it's just enough to allow the bearing to come loose after a while and then you get wear in the bearing. So every 200,000 miles, you retorque it to make up for the wear and everything else. Well, when you're on the passenger side, that's great. It wants to tighten all the time. But on the driver's side, that's why you get the wear on this side. That's the worst one because it's the most heat. You get more heat buildup. When you're going down the road, guess what? It wants to loosen the nut constantly. So it always wants to loosen this bearing. So after a couple 100,000 miles, that little bit of give and that little bit of extra loosening factor and heat causes this one to wear faster than the rest of them most of the time on the driver's side.
Okay.
Because it has the most leniency. Because it wants to come unscrewed. So every couple 100,000 miles, you retorque all your bearings to make sure that doesn't happen. If you don't, you get this wear right here on the inside of your tires. I don't know if you've seen trucks before. They got this really bad step wear right here on all four tires.
Okay.
Or just on one or two. That step wear is 99% of the time somebody didn't do the retorque of the hub bearings. It doesn't take much.
When you're out on the road and you don't like work on trucks all by yourself and know lots of people that you can rely on to help you out or know a lot of reliable shops, how would somebody choose one, especially for women that are just starting out, single woman that doesn't know too many people?
Do some research. Do some research. Ask others. And find out, from others. Don't just take testimony off their webpage or things like this, because that's really misleading on most of these sites anymore.
Yeah.
My forum has a lot of that. My forum is all technical, mostly technical. It's mostly people who do their own work, who talk about just this kind of stuff. So if you ever have any questions, you know, hey, what should I be looking for? This mechanic told me that, you know, my transaxle gear number 3 is stripped, and I can't get it in 9th gear. You know, well, you know, ask that on the forum.
Okay.
Some of it may not make sense to somebody. Some of it may make sense to somebody. You know, I can always get with Jerry or one of the guys on the forum that do transmissions and say, what's he talking about? It's this gear, you know. Or, hey, you know, there's something going on fishy there. Or, hey, that's definitely true because, you know, 9th gear is what you wore out. So, you know, who knows? You know, all these technical questions and things. That's what my internet site's basically, you know, for. And there's a lot of other sites online too.
Okay.
Always be a little cautious. You know, personally, I like the mom and pop places that are near where you live.
Yeah.
That aren't too big, and you know, you're not just a number to them. Because usually the mom and pop places, if you do something wrong, they'll try to fix it. But you know, if you take it to a big OEM dealership or something like that, and they make a mistake, they're not going to admit it. First thing they're not going to do, they're not going to admit it. They're going to say, "Oh well, it was caused from," and then they're going to charge you more money for something else, and it's just going to continue you know, the expense is just going to keep rising.
Okay.
So it's not really good to go to shops like that. One thing that I stay away from, I tell people to stay away from, is shops that won't let you see what they're doing. You know, a lot of shops, their insurance won't let you in the bay, you know, with the truck, and I don't blame them for that. But if you can't stand at the edge of the bay, if you can't see, if they can't, you know, if you say, hey, take pictures of this and show me the damage, let me take an assessment, you know, and let me actually see the damage with my own eyes before I approve it's this $5,000 repair, you know, explain this to me, show this to me, you know, let me record what you say or write it down or email it to me so it's a legal document. If they can't do those things, then they're not standing on their own 2 feet. They're standing on somebody else's feet, and there's something sly going on.
Okay.
Not sure? Ask.
Okay.
Do research. Learn a little bit about what you got to have done.
Rawze.com. Is it sectioned off? It's like just go in the forum and ask. Find
Just
the
ask.
thread on mechanic.
Yeah. Ask your question, or you know, ISX engine questions, or ProStar, or Peterbilt. You know, there's a few sections on there, but
Okay.
you know, anybody, you know, can join it. I have it where if you're not a member of it, before you can post and ask questions, you have to get an invite code.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I hate that. Believe me, I hate going to a website and having to, what? I got a what? You know, I just want to ask, you know, I hated doing that. It was horrible for me to do that. I felt like it was horrible for me to do that. But that's the only way I could keep the Chinese and African spam bots out of it. People were making accounts by the thousands. They would make these robot programs to make accounts by the thousands. And they would go in and put like prescription drug advertisements and all kinds of, and they would, oh my God, it was horrible. And I had to stop it. And every time I would put like, oh, you got to do a capture or a special signature, you know, they would thwart it after a few weeks. So it just got to the point where, you know what, I just got to make sure it's a human. Let them ask for a code. I'll give them a code. And I know it's a person at this point. It sucks, but the internet's just gotten bad.
All right. Yeah.
You know?
We have.
But I don't discriminate. Even if somebody, you know, emailed me and said, "Hey, I don't like you. I want to say something." Well, if it has merit, here's a code. Just make sure it has merit. You know, I'll still give them a code. Or I disagree with something. You know, we don't have problems with that as long as it has merit.
Okay.
So, anyways, cab suspension shocks. You know, just make sure if you're feeling a really bouncy, roughy ride, you know, every bridge you go over is trying to knock the teeth out of your head. You know, these shocks aren't expensive. Fortunately, you have a KW, a Kenworth, and the airbags are separate from the shocks. So the shocks are only about $30-40.
Okay.
You know, this is cheap stuff to keep you from beating your back to death all day and stuff like that. And it also helps save the wiring in your truck.
All right.
You know, your wiring will get jostled, and eventually you'll have cab problems and dash problems. And you know, these people that don't maintain this stuff, they end up with wiring issues all the time. So,
all right.
It's something to think about. Keep an eye on when you drive it. Doors closed good, nothing's out of alignment or kilter, or you know, nothing's out of
Should I pull
twisted.
that brake now?
Huh?
Should I pull that brake?
Yeah, go ahead and pull the brake. We got the chop, we got the wheels chopped, but go ahead and pull the brake.
Makes me nervous.
That's fine. There you go. You check your hub oil. Make sure your hub oil is good. You're a little low. Make sure it's not dark and nasty. A little bit dark, but not bad. I would top that off. It's a little low.
Okay.
Every 200,000 miles or so. Same thing, there's a filter here for your power steering. I can't tell you how many thousand people I've met over the years that have trucks that don't even know there's a filter inside this thing. And then they wonder why after 400,000 miles, the top blows out of the power steering unit, and they end up having to spend, you know, $1,000 or more to replace it because they never changed the filter and never changed the oil. So I recommend replacing the oil at 250,000 miles. Obviously, so that's just a lot of maintenance to do in this thing at the range that you're at. And these are things that are going to keep you running the next $250,000 without all these issues.
Okay.
So, you know, you're going to want a new filter in here. You're going to want to flush this out, you know, put a little pan under here, or crack one of the lines, you know, crank the truck, let it bleed, and pour new oil in it, you know, just until the nice clean oil starts coming out, and then put the new filter on. It's easy to do, but if you wait to 500,000 miles, it's going to be so nasty, you won't be hard to be able to get it clean.
Okay.
So that's one thing you're going to want to do soon. Like I said, I've seen a lot of grease points that aren't greased. You know.
Right.
I generally take mine to Speedco and let them grease it. I'm lazy. But I do know where every grease point is. I at least once got under my truck and found them all. And so every time I go to Speedco, because I have a ProStar, every time I go to Speedco, I look at the guy and I said, there's 31 grease points. Count them up as you do them.
Okay.
And so they have to find them.
Okay.
They have to count them off.
All right.
Sometimes they have trouble, and I have to point, you know, and it's really nice to know that you can point when they miss them. Because if they're missing one over and over and over and over, you're going to have a failure. You're going to have a failure fast, especially in the front end of steering, things like this, kingpins and all that. Usually they're pretty good about greasing those, but it's just that one joint that's going to cost you a whole lot of money one day on the road. It's always going to be at 3 o'clock in the morning in Wyoming when you don't need it. So
and there's no phone service.
And there's no phone service. So those are all different things. You have this secondary filter on here. Make sure they put a good filter in here. I tell people to put a 10 micron filter in there just to keep the fuel clean, because if you put a 50, I think by default they're a 50 micron filter. So when you go to Speedco or the oil change place, say, look, I want a 10 micron filter in there. I don't care what the book says, put a 10 in there. And the reason why you want to do that is because the fuel system likes to build up asphaltene and just black gunk in the tanks and things like that. If you put a 10 micron filter in there, it keeps it down, it keeps it at bay. But if you put a 50 in there, it'll build up. After 500,000 miles, you're going to have all this gunk in your fuel system. It's gonna weaken your injectors and everything else on the engine, and that's not good.
Okay.
When you get to 400,000 miles, speaking of injectors and fuel system, this fuel pump, and I'll tell you, there's a couple Achilles heels with this model engine. It's a CM2350 Cummins engine. One of its Achilles heels, I mean, you want to see this? Zoom in for the fuel pump here. This is the fuel pump. It's behind, unfortunately, it's behind this bracket. It's right here. This is the fuel pump. That's the head of the fuel pump right there. This whole section right here. That little roundy thing. Those fuel pumps are notorious to fail between 400,000 and 500,000 miles or 600,000 miles. Okay. Yours is a 2016. I don't know when the engine build date is. Probably on here somewhere.
Yeah.
If it was before May of 2013, then you need to fix something now. But after May of 2013, I wouldn't worry about it for a little while. Let's see. Okay, 02 of 15. So this is a newer one.
Want to show that?
0215.
Yeah, it's right here on the data plate. Yeah, that's what the cover says. So.
Okay.
Now, the original fuel pumps had ceramic plungers. They had ceramic pistons, and the ceramic would, after a while, it would wear in the wall, and because it has no give, it would snap. And when the ceramic would snap, it would shatter. And ceramic is a harder material than anything in your engine. Okay. It's like worse than glass. What happens when that thing snaps is it puts all that ceramic into your oil system, and it destroys your motor in about 500 miles without any warning.
Wow.
You've got about 2 days before the engine actually seizes up, and the only warning you'll get is you'll get a code in the dash that says low fuel pressure. When you get on the accelerator really hard, that's the only. You'll get a check engine light comes and goes for fuel pressure when you're trying to climb a hill or something. But it'll go away. That's the only warning you have. It's the Achilles heel of this engine. The older model engines had ceramic plungers. It was a really bad problem. Okay, this one should have been fixed because after May of 2013, is my understanding. I don't know if that's for sure. This is what everybody says. Build dates after May of 2013, they put titanium plungers in, which helped it a lot.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean your problem is gone. It's still a weak point in the engine. what happens with the titanium ones is after 400,000 or 500,000 miles, they chew the metal up, and then it still goes through your motor, and it still makes all the damage. It just takes a couple days more.
Mm-hmm.
So after 300 or 400 miles of driving, after this thing has failed, that's all it takes. You're starting to do major damage, and you'll lose the whole engine within a day or so. So if you ever get a low fuel pressure code that only comes and goes when you're putting the accelerator on, if I owned this engine, I would be in panic mode right on this spot. I would be pulling that oil filter. I would go, the first place I could pull off that has an oil filter, I would pull that oil filter off, and I would look for metal shavings in that oil filter.
Okay.
Because you'll get metal shavings in the oil filter.
All right.
So, but it's going to go through the whole motor. The oil filter won't catch it all, and that's sad.
So replacing the fuel pump doesn't solve it if all the
What
fuel
I recommend
pumps-
people do at 400,000 miles is to pull the head off the fuel pump, replace the tappets and plungers in it with a rebuild kit, and put it back together, so that they never really have to worry about it.
Okay.
And that's, a lot of people don't do that, but many people do. It is a huge, huge thing on my forum that people discuss, because there has been so many people that have lost their engines and had total engine destruction over this. It's not funny, with no warning whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
You ask the engine maker, they say, "Oh, it's not a problem." Well, it may not be a problem, but the people on my forum have a problem with it, so I mention it.
Okay.
You can take it with a grain of salt. It's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, hood looks good. There's no cracks. Bumper looks good. Your tires are okay for now, I guess. You need to check the pressure in them and all that stuff. The wiring, make sure all your zip ties are in place, all your wiring's in place. These KWs up under this corner right here, where they come across the frame,